Hey guys, welcome back to another video on my training journey with Sparrow, a Devil's Garden Wild Mustang. I have to say, it was really fun to read through the comments on last week's video. A lot of you were super excited to see Britta back on the channel. If you watched that last video, you know that I brought Britta over to be a companion to Sparrow, with hopes that it might help Sparrow relax a bit. And it really did make quite a big difference. I received a comment from Claire reminding me of how Britta was once in that reverse role. Libby and Britta were my first wild Mustangs, and when I initially got them, Libby was much bolder than Britta. It was because of Libby that I had my first interactions with Britta. Now, truth be told, that feels like such a long time ago, and it had sort of slipped my mind, so thanks Claire for reminding me of that. I really appreciate that. It's so fun to see how things came full circle here, and now Britta is in that new role. So Britta was definitely a game changer. Don't get me wrong, Sparrow is still very fearful and has a long way to go. However, what Britta has done is given me an actual starting point to work with. Because of Britta, Sparrow seems willing to give me a chance. She's now eating near me and also eats out of my hand. She's very reserved and hesitant about eating out of my hand, but at least I have something to work from now. After seeing just how fearful Sparrow was, I made the decision to start her initially with positive reinforcement, and then plan to introduce the typical pressure release sort of training. This video is going to show just how I've been able to get her going. So a note on this, I'm quite new to positive reinforcement, and I will probably watch this in about a few months and cringe at just how badly I'm doing things. I know it may sound like I'm a broken record for those of you who watch my videos regularly, but I think it's worth saying for anyone new to the channel that these videos are not intended to give you professional advice, nor are they tutorials. I am just showing my journey as I learn and grow in the process of training these wild Mustangs. So I started with just getting Sparrow comfortable eating out of my hand. So I would sit outside of the fence in a chair, and Britta would come over, grab a snack, and then Sparrow would just watch and linger, and then eventually she would also come over and grab a snack. The next step I took was separating the horses. I sat in the corner where the pens adjoined so I could feed both horses at once. I then slowly moved my chair further away from Britta's pen, which is what you see here. I sat in the chair so that my body would appear a little bit smaller, as Sparrow was more intimidated when I stood up. I also had to be very careful with how I fed her. Even the smallest finger twitch would cause her to spook, so I had to keep my hand very still. I do want to mention that this is not her first time doing this, and that's why she's looking pretty brave right now. The next step, which I'm just going to talk about, was introducing a bridge sound so that I could start teaching Sparrow how to target. A bridge sound can be a word, sound, or click, and it's used to mark the moment of a correct behavior being performed. It's followed by a reward. I had to introduce the bridge sound, deet, so she would associate the sound with the coming of a reward. Once she got that, then I could move on to targeting. Because Sparrow wasn't initially very comfortable with my hand, I introduced her to targeting by using a pool noodle on a stick. She was pretty curious about it. I started by asking her to target. I would provide the bridge sound and reward her for even just sniffing the target. Once she got the hang of that, I gradually changed the point on her nose that I was rewarding to more on the bridge of her nose, which is what I'm working on here in these clips. I then added a 3-second countdown and started working my way up.
Target. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, eat.
Once Sparrow was proficient at targeting the stick, it was time to transfer the target point to my hand. This was a really big step. After many repetitions, I added a 3-second countdown and then worked my way up. Target. Almost. Almost. 3, 2, 1, deet. Even though she was so scared, Sparrow was trying so hard. After she would spook, she would eventually come back. Like I mentioned, I am still new to positive reinforcement. I do want to learn a variety of methods and techniques so I can keep adding to my toolbox, but right now I'm just focusing on this positive reinforcement with Sparrow. I just purchased some books on the subject and I'm looking forward to diving more into it. This video is just me working with my limited knowledge, but hopefully it can give you an idea of how the process has been for us.
Target. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, feet.
Once she was targeting, I added a stroke down her nose as I was taking my hand away.
Are you ready? Target. 3, 2, 1, feet.
I then changed that to multiple strokes down her nose.
Target. Target. 3, 2, 1, feet. Target.
This was an exciting day as I had never interacted with her like this before.
3, 2, 1, feet.
Even though this may look like nothing for another horse, for her this was a big deal, and because of that it felt so rewarding.
4, 3, 2, 1, feet.
As I was working with her, I could see her demeanor changing. Her eye was softening and becoming more relaxed. She became inquisitive about my hand, and she even let me start scratching her. And actually seemed like she enjoyed those scratches. These were some really special moments between us. The next step was getting Sparrow to eat out of my hand while I was in a standing position. She's never done this before.
Target.
I started by asking her to target. I quickly realized that this wasn't going to work, so I had to go back a few levels with my other steps and start by just hand feeding. You'll see this happening a lot when I'm working with her. Each time I go up a level, I may have to go down a few levels in another area. So I had to start back with hand feeding before I could get to targeting.
I've never fed her out of my hand while standing up. That's a first. Target.
Once she was more comfortable eating out of my hand while standing up, I went back to targeting. Next, we took a big step and I went into the pen. Now again, because we've made a big change, I have to start again with hand feeding before I can move on to targeting. I go back to hand feeding if I make a big change or if it's just a new day and we're starting from the beginning, and then I move up to targeting. But because me going into the pen is a really big deal, I decided to break it down again, and instead of asking her to target my hand, we went with the stick because I knew she'd be more comfortable with that. From there, I slowly worked up my levels again, starting with asking her to hold with a countdown. Here I am on another day, just starting out my training session. Again, starting with hand feeding. Here I've moved on to asking her to target my hand. This has obviously been a very long process, and you have not even seen a fraction of all the repetitions I've done to get her to this point. Working with Sparrow has been very different than working with Libby and Britta. When I first got into Mustangs, I was honestly expecting a horse more like Sparrow, so Libby and Britta kind of surprised me by being very different than my expectations. I am really glad to have a horse like this now who is a little bit more challenging, and it takes time and it's a lot of work to earn their trust. This is really good for me just to be able to experience a variety of horses. Sparrow moved on to doing the countdowns.
3, 2, 1, feet.
I have to let you in on what I see when I'm working with her. Look at that adorable face. She is trying so hard.
3, 2, 1, feet. Target.
It seriously melts my heart when I'm working with her. She's just so cute.
Target. 3, 2, 1, deet.
Just a reminder, every time I say deet, I give her a reward. I don't always show that because it just takes up a lot of time in the video. Here I've been working on adding the countdown and then adding a stroke to that countdown.
5, woof. Target. Target. 5, 4, 3.
She really wasn't quite ready for that, and hence the spook. So guess what happens next? Yep, after she distanced herself for a couple of minutes, I had to start over with hand feeding before I could work my way back up. Breaking things down into tiny little steps has been really helpful for Sparrow, and it's really important that I don't push through these steps too quickly. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed seeing a little bit more of Sparrow, and before you leave, check out little Britta.
Alright guys, I'm going to turn my camera around. Look at her. Britta! Oh, you tired? Hi, baby. Where are you? You want some alfalfa? You look so sleepy. Okay. You're a good girl. Very good girl. Here, have some.